Michigan's Democrats flipped the state legislature and Senate in the 2022 midterms, giving them complete control of the state government for the first time in 40 years. On the same election day, a group of far-right Republicans in Ottawa County, west of Grand Rapids, unseated 7 traditional Republicans on the county board. The 7 Republicans, who are part of a group called Ottawa Impact, pledged to, quote, recognize our nation's Judeo-Christian heritage and celebrate America as an exceptional nation blessed by God. That pledge and other actions have led one fellow board member to say it's becoming more and more evident that these people are Christian nationalists. Joining us now, national political correspondent for Politico, David Siders. David, you're the correspondent who reported on the group and how far-right members are taking control of local governments. What does it look like? How prevalent is this? And what is the danger?
Well, I think it's not isolated. We saw this happen in Shasta County in California, a very red enclave where far-right Republicans took control of a local board. And certainly you've seen school boards where, conservatives are making runs in ways that they hadn't before. So I think it's not isolated. And also the belief in the tenets of Christian nationalism isn't isolated either. We see polling that maybe most Republicans, a slight majority at least, either adhere to or are sympathetic to Christian nationalist views. The danger, that there's some relatively small things, like in this case, the closure of a diversity, equity, and inclusion office, the changing of a logo, the installation of a new county administrator. I think the broader concern about Christian nationalism is the divisiveness of, polarizing different religions and which one should count or shouldn't count in America.
Yeah. And is there any sense that voters and people who are responsible for putting these people in office had a sense of who they were voting for?
Yeah, I think so. And the Ottawa Impact candidates were not hiding. They had forums that they put videos online. They were, I think, very upfront about who they are and what they represent. And this wasn't like a commission that snuck in. And I think that's important because after the midterms, there was this kind of sense, I think, in Washington that the Republican Party would moderate because it saw some of its most far-right Trumpian candidates fail in November. And since then, I don't think that we've seen that be the case. I mean, you look at Arizona, what they've done recently, and Kari Lake's continuing popularity there. Michigan over the weekend, electing an election denier as chair of the Republican Party in the state. And then certainly when you come down to these test case or these petri dish kind of places that are very, very red, it's not like they're moderating as a result. If anything, I think it's hardening on the right.
Yeah, and in fact, Donald Trump congratulated the new chair of the Republican Party for her election denialism, said that was the credential that earned his support. A question for you, how big is Ottawa County? In other words, is this something isolated to a small group of people, to a small part of Michigan, or is this something that we're seeing more broadly across the state?
Well, as you pointed out, the election of an election denier in the state, I think it's isolated to the extent that Democrats had a very good night in Michigan in November, and so this doesn't necessarily travel, right? It doesn't work in competitive states or in moderate districts, but in a place like the Republican Party or in Ottawa County, which is about 300,000 people, and is heavily conservative. It hasn't gone for a Democrat for president in, I think, more than 100 years. It definitely works here. And so, yeah, it's not the majority of the county even. I think turnout in the primary there was something like 34%. So it's not a huge number of total votes, but as a reflection of what that community is, I think it's an honest representation.
So, David, tell us a little bit about the agenda for this group of Christian nationalists. What are some changes they've already instituted to the government there, and what do they hope to accomplish in the future?
Well, I think limited government and a sense of religiosity are the two things on their agenda. So clearly they're against mask mandates. They've asked to install as the county's new public health commissioner, and this is pending, not commissioner, public health officer, pending state approval, somebody who is an anti-masker, was anti-social distancing. He works at an HVAC company and recommended neti pots and ivermectin as treatments for COVID, which leads to these kind of amazing headlines in the local paper, which has just been doing a bang-up job, covering this nonstop. A headline like, the commission's proposed public health officer has no experience. Here's why that could be a problem. That's pretty stunning to me. And then John Gibbs, you may remember, ran for Congress. They've put him in as the new county administrator, and it's possible that he can administer a county. We just don't know. So part of this is, check back in a year and see what the budget negotiations looked like and whether the roads are paved, because so much of what is done at the county level, as you know, is not ideological, right? It's a pass through. It's a huge pass through of money. Pave the roads. Hire IT employees, do normal kinds of things.
National political correspondent for Politico, David Siders, thank you so much for your reporting this.